Hello, Capital H listeners. David Mallon here, your co-host and Deloitte Human Capital's head of research. In today's episode of Capital H, two of our favorite voices on the pod, Matt Shannon and Franz Gilbert, are going to lead a conversation on one of the more fascinating shifts happening in the world of work today, and that is the evolving relationship between humans and machines. They're going to dive into emerging innovations, including AI and AI co-pilots, task intelligence tools, and even humanoid robotics. Let's dive into the conversation. Matt and Franz, on to you.
All right, and welcome back to Capital H audience, to our special episode today, recording live from Deloitte's Boundaryless HR Experience Theater at the HR Technology Conference and Expo 2025. I'm Matthew Shannon, Deloitte's HR Technology Relationships Leader, and I'm glad to be joined by Franz Gilbert, Managing Director at Deloitte, who leads our Human Capital Ecosystems and Alliances team globally, as well as Deloitte's Human Capital Strategy and Innovation team. Now, Franz is both a leading voice on the intersection of people and technology in the space, but he's also been spending years tracking how emerging tools like agentic AI co-pilots, task intelligence platforms, and yes, even various forms of robots are reshaping the way organizations operate and the way that their workforces support them. Now, loyal listeners will recognize our voices as we're part of a recurring series here on the Capital H podcast, specifically focused on HR market insights. And in today's special episode, we will cover highlights and takeaways from the HR Technology Conference and Expo, or HR Tech for short. We'll also spend time discussing one of the most dynamic and debated topics across the show this week, which regards the future of work itself. And that specifically is the intersection between humans and machines. We've been talking about this a lot as humans time machines. With our location today already shared, I can confidently say that we are quite literally best positioned for covering the topics at the HR technology market, as we're currently surrounded on the expo floor in our podcast studio here by over 400 exhibiting vendors. And Franz even spent time this week looking around the expo floor. Our team directly has had interactions with close to 100 of those 400 exhibiting vendors, probably double that in terms of vendors that are here, but not in that exhibiting capacity. As we are at the HR Technology Conference, what is it that this event means to you, and how have you appreciated it over time, and in particular, the time spent here this week?
First of all, Matt, this is awesome, man. I mean, we get a break to get off the floor and actually do this podcast, which is fantastic. First and foremost is this is always a family reunion, right? I mean, for those who are in the community in the HR technology space, there's an understanding that we've all been here for a really long time. We've worked with different providers, people have moved. And so there's just this genuine passion of a cohort of people that love this space, right? Which is always a fantastic feeling, lots of hugs going on. I think the second piece is this is always a place where you can kind of get a feel for what's going on with the industry, right? In terms of number of new providers, what are they focusing on? What's the messaging look like, right? You can kind of get a sense of what's the investor groups looking like, right? They're doing the HR startup, the investor panels. So it's a lot of fun to feel it. And I will tell you, this show, and I was just talking with Aaron Spencer about this, is it feels much more vibrant this year. There is a different energy. There's a lot of excitement going on. We know from Gartner that the spend for HR technology is going to continue to expand, but you can feel that energy here where people are going, not only am I getting to look to toys, but what am I going to be doing with them, right? There's an understanding of they're actually going to get to purchase and use these products.
I do love that, Franz, and especially as we think about the perennial nature of this event, it truly does feel like a reunion amongst the community of HR technology enthusiasts, the providers, the developers of the tools, influencers, like you had mentioned, in the analyst community, investors even. It's certainly a rotating cast of characters that we get to see at this event. And as we see the new technologies, the flavors, the buzzwords that emanate in the space, let's talk a little bit about some of the few standout capability features that you've seen from the show. So that starts a little bit of top-rated vendors. So what are some of the top-rated technologies that we've seen this week?
That's always a tough one for me. This is like, what's your favorite child, right? And so I think I don't even want to go to a vendor, right? I think the biggest thing that's showing up in this show is obviously the impact of the Smart Recruiters acquisition, the Paradox acquisition. There's been some others. And what is amazing is seeing the platforms all really focusing on how to smooth out their agentic experience, right? They really want to make sure from beginning, from talent acquisition all the way to retirement, that there's a TA piece, an agent piece into it. I think the second piece that actually I was very surprised by, and it's great to see, is there was actually a lot of wellness and ben admin providers here, and disproportionate to what we've had in the previous years. So seeing a lot of that, but it's very exciting to see the expansion. I think many of our listeners are used to kind of EORs and employer of records and payroll last mile. There's amazing vendors here, but now we're starting to see that kind of benefits play too, where it's the last mile and benefits globally. So that's probably the other one. But what about you? You walk the floor just as much as I do. It's fun watching you. And we've got our new member, Sarah, here too, which is fantastic. And Annette, what have you all seen today?
Yeah, it's absolutely delight to be able to walk around and see all the new vendor capabilities, the new products that launch. As you talk specifically about not having to choose a favorite out of that mix, I think one of the nice things about this specific event is there is a panel that actually helps to rate top products of the year. So that's something where we're happy to celebrate the participation of vendor names in that list, in addition to just the vendors that we've got to see on the floor. That, as well as the pitch fest that goes on each year, those are capabilities that should be announced just in the next few hours as the finalists are wrapping up. I do love the call outs, particularly to increase numbers of employer of record vendors that are at this space this year, as well as not just the ben admin and the various types of benefits, but it's the synchronization of different types of individual health benefits, whether it be your healthcare, your dental, your vision, being able to consolidate and query and make sure you're using all of those benefits, or even in the space of artificial intelligence. That's something where you can't really turn around at this conference and not see AI splashed across vendor logos and their booths or not. So as we think about big shifts in AI and tying to our conversation topic today on humans times machines, where is AI sitting in the current hype cycle in HR technology, and how is that playing a role in the vendors that are showing up today and this week at the show?
This is one where I'm so excited to see that the industry has pivoted. Last year, and kind of in the midst of the agentic hype, everyone was doing kind of the synthetic FTE. You know, you pay for the software, it would be consumption-based, and this synthetic FTE could do everything a recruiter could do or everything a compensation one would do. And it's really neat to see that the industry has dialed that back and kind of reconciled with what the reality is at this point. Yeah, because the Deloitte research is absolutely showing that AI is additive, but there's kind of think of it in three ways. You've got its assistant, where, that's kind of that your co-pilot. You go to it for, interesting to kind of help you do things, writing, stuff like that. There's augmented, where it can help you do, like in the midst of sales and marketing, note-taking, right? It's starting to augment how you're doing your work. And then there's autonomous. Well, a very small percentage of tasks, and I want to make sure the audience understands, it's not jobs, it's tasks that can be done autonomously. And the industry is starting to reconcile with this, which is fantastic, because now they're not over-promising what's going to be done. So there's a lot of agentic providers here, but at the same time, they're really focused on, here's how it can help your existing teams, right? Here's how it can help you gain efficiencies, which at this stage of time, it's the right conversation to have.
Stage and time for certain. And there's two things that you talked about there, Franz, that I want to unpack a little bit further as we get into this conversation. The first piece, again, back to that question on AI, it's not just what we're seeing from analyst groups, but we're really excited when the World Economic Forum just put out their Chief People Officer report. And we're talking about 3 of 9 listed priorities. Those top 3 were collaborations across HR and IT on deployments of AI use cases, mapping the impact of AI on people, jobs, tasks, as you were just mentioning, and processes, and then deployments of those related processes. So really seeing that we're not just grappling with what the technology can do, but how are we activating it as part of that? I think that's really nicely tied to what we've been sharing as part of our story and our narrative here at Deloitte's Boundaryless HR Experience booth. Can you share some of the Deloitte assets that we feature there and how they've tied into the services that we deliver to our clients?
Yeah, there's probably 3. So one, we've got our workforce analyzer, and that was incredibly well received. It's a product that allows one of our clients we import all of the job descriptions, the task duties, things like that, and it analyzes all that data and helps build out the use cases where companies should be focusing their proof of concepts with. Where are they looking for assist, augmented? Where are the tasks that actually could be autonomous? And this product saves folks a tremendous amount of time. So that was fantastic, because some folks are going, I know I need to do the AI, but help give me a little bit of a compass. The second one is our change agent. we showed we've got an amazing agent that's a behavioral nudging tool. So it helps with change transformation. I will say that was probably our highest attended session. It was amazing to see. Allison did a fantastic job with that. And that goes right along with agentic adoption, right? You're going to need to change one. And then the last one, Russell Kloss just did his, and in there he was showing what we could do with digital twins and MoveWorks. It was absolutely phenomenal because people got to see how we've continued to evolve our relationship with MoveWorks. Last year at the HR Technology Show, we showed the HR Business Partner, and Russell was able to show what we're doing even now from an agentic standpoint using that product as an orchestration layer. And so that was amazing. So it was kind of fun that people kind of got to see where we're helping clients in all steps of the stage, right? From the very beginning of give me a compass to I've got a proof of concept helping with change to, all right, how actually do I deploy this?
Yeah, and across that workforce analyzer, workforce planner, love to see the promise of these use cases, not just what the capability is, but deliver for clients. I think when you're at a conference like this, especially when you walk around and see a lot of color, a lot of pomp, a lot of really slick looking demos in booths, you kind of get lost in the technical and the application of AI. So applied AI is certainly a term that we hear a lot this week as we get into the real world environments where you actually have to share, offload, resequence work that you're handing off to different types of agentic capabilities. I do want to dig further into that task-related component. And I know you talked about both our Workforce Analyzer and our Workforce Planner Plus tool. Can you share some of what you've seen around the topic of task intelligence this week as a complement to something we've heard a lot in this space and at this conference over the years around skills intelligence, and in particular, how that's even materializing in topics and words that we hear like work orchestration or work intelligence? How is that going to ultimately get towards strategic workforce planning?
Yeah. Well, and it's not even just the workforce planning. So I know for many of our listeners who are schooled in IO psychology, this will be kind of a gimme, but skills data is incredibly important data from an inventory perspective. It helps you figure out your labor supply and your labor demand, right? Who do I have that knows X, right? Task is the verb. And it's more how is that piece done? So somebody may know COBOL, but imagine the task could be very different as to what someone's doing with the COBOL. And so as a result, task data is very different. And you have to have task data to do work redesign. Skills data is actually almost irrelevant to redesigning how work is done. It's interesting, it's helpful data, but it doesn't help you redesign the work. So as we go to agentic, people need to understand that task piece. So we have seen a couple companies show up with more task data, like our workforce analyzers. Some have got that capability. But I think it's also helping people understand in order to do agentic adoption, we really are going to have to do the hard work and do the adoption piece.
And I think it's even more than just a few examples. I think the number one product capability that I've seen either launched this week or talked about in some of the keynotes is this task-related intelligence. It does complement what we've talked about as deficiencies in applying supply and demand principles to talent marketplaces. We don't have the full robustness of skills, which is now starting to be solved by some of those agentic capabilities to supplement skills profiles. But as we dig further into what's the complementary piece on tasks to develop that broader understanding of what work has to happen and even what tasks could be potentially automated by various types of technology today and in the future. We've seen, even walking on the floor today, product demos of this is launched live today at the HR Technology Conference. So very, very excited about that. Now, when we talk about tasks, some of the things we see next being executed by forms of technology are not just software-based tasks. We're actually looking at physical interaction, real-world environments. Now, we're catching this podcast at the end of our HR Technology Conference week, but next week we're attending another busy conference in our conference season with the opportunity to attend the Association for Advancing Automation, their second annual Humanoid Robot Forum. Now, let's unpack that a little bit. For those who aren't familiar with humanoid robots outside of maybe the videos from the social media feeds, why does this humanoid form factor matter?
I think for us, as AI continues, right, and we think about robots, right, it allows you to mechanically interact with your environment. And the AI allows it to start to see, listen, right, and starts to think about how is it going to be doing that. And so it's exciting to see the humanoid. And just so everyone understands, the reason why humanoid is such a big deal, aside from the fact that just candidly, we know it's cool looking, right? I mean, we know that's a lot of fun. But the reality is, for robots to scale, right now, if you think about the way it's been doing so far, robotics has been more cobots, right? They're single machine, 6-axis arms, right? They're very bespoke things. And people have to design their environment to be good with that. Whereas humanoid robotics, they now can operate environments that we're used to operating, going up and down stairs, stepping over wires, things like that. And the implements, instead of being hard-coded implements, they have fingers and hands. Now, there's a little bit of a debate as whether or not you should have hands on the humanoid, total side story. But if they have hands, they can use the same things that you and I use. And so that humanoid design is more about how do we allow physical AI to operate our environments because our environment is designed for us.
And can I give you an actually on the floor example of a humanoid that I saw today at the conference? One of the tasks that they're actually accomplishing today is handing out coffee. So there's a humanoid that we see that has arms and a torso that delivers custom-made espresso drinks to attendees on the guest floor. So a really surprising way that we're not at the humanoid forum yet, but we're seeing them even active at the HR technology conference.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people taking selfies with that. It's always fun.
Now, as we start thinking about the increased presence of robots like that, not just on conference floors, but in our workplaces as well, what are some of the things that leaders should be thinking about, particularly in the HR side of the house, around the cultural workflow and maybe even supportive training implications of working with humanoid robot colleagues?
Yeah. Boy, we could spend 40 minutes on this. But the quick version is, and this is why you and I spend so much time in that market with the humanoid going next Tuesday, is we know the progression is speeding up. Right. There are going to be hundreds of humanoids in market next year, thousands after that. We know by 2030, estimates are 40,000 at the minimum is what's going to be in the marketplace. There's numbers as high as 400,000. So they are coming. And so from a leadership perspective, as you think about your workforce plans, most workforce plans are 3 to 5 years. So you already need to be taking into account what jobs within those workforce plans should be doing this. The other piece is we built a really comprehensive framework from a Deloitte perspective, helping leaders navigate this because there's a host of infrastructure issues, cybersecurity, physical issues, software issues that in order for you to gain the benefits of what those robots can do for your environment, there are other things that you need to tackle, and they are not very fast things to tackle. Think about your physical plant design. So if you are designing your stores or your operations now, you need to be building it thinking in 3 years, you're going to have humanoid robotics in it. So that's probably the biggest piece is helping understand that this is now going to become, in Horizon 1, a reality. So people need to be planning for it.
In that horizon, even as we react on, starting to show up in different places, any particular industries where we're seeing that show up sooner in those 3 to 5 years rather than later?
There's two fun ones. Well, and I kind of combine them, right? But warehousing, supply chain. And that one next obviously spans across industries, right? Everyone's got warehouse distribution centers, things like that. But there, it's more of the repetitive motion, right? They're using that as the training ground because that's an environment where they're pulling totes and they're pulling the same totes. They're doing a lot of that. The next industry is really where they're showing how it can add tremendous value because of a labor demand and supply issue, and that's healthcare. As you know, we're working with an amazing client that we're working to deploy the robots in their environment. And what they're realizing is with the nursing shortage, we need to allow nurses to work top of funnel. So there are things that the robots can do now. The AMRs are going to be moving things. So think supply, transportation, bringing things over to the lab. That way you're not taking a nurse's time to do it. And that can be happening now.
Oh, yes, the autonomous mobile robots.
Thank you.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I do think that's one of the things that we're most excited to see of not just how are we replacing humans with types of machines, but how are we doing 3 different things. This is something we certainly saw in our Deloitte research with the Center for Integrated Research on 3 potential scenarios of working with increased automation and technology in the workplace. Status quo, late adopters, you're not seeing too much, maybe incremental innovation at best. You have the replacement and cost savings approach where you are directly letting individuals go because you're supplementing the work that they do with different types of robots. That may be an initial cost savings, but we made plenty of scenarios where you have to hire back individuals to accomplish or oversee the work the robot was doing. But then there's the value-add collaborative sense. And I do think that that's something that, even though this is an audio medium, we're really talking about humans times machines, humans X machines. And that's part of the story here. HR, in particular, has the opportunity to be an architect of the workforce, one that sees humans and technology as a force multiplier of both productivity and not just the replacement equation. So as we think through that, anything overlooked on this humans and machines concept that really you want to drive home for our audience on what makes it work better together?
I think we've covered a lot of it, and we can hear from the floor that it's going to get noisy here. It's always kind of fun at the closing point when all the noise gets going. I think the thing I'm looking forward, Matt, you and I have spent a lot of time together. I can't wait to put out our predictions for next year. I mean, there's a lot going on. I have to, when I look back at our HR tech predictions that we did last year, we actually did a pretty good job nailing actually every one of them.
I like it.
Yeah, we did good.
Task intelligence, details, some previews for things to come. I'm really excited looking at commercial models this year, the rise of governance as almost an equivalent buzzword to some of the technology we've talked about, like agentic AI or task intelligence. So I think if we were to even revisit this conversation after we do our predictions, what are some of the top things that you'd like to see in our predictions for next year? Predictions of predictions.
Yeah. The piece, I think, next year, there is going to be a back to basics there are so many products that are going end of life or conversion programs going on. I think there's going to be a lot of, and it doesn't sound exciting, but I think there is going to be a significant focus on how are people doing all that conversion, keeping their legacy data, doing the migrations. I think that's going to be one of the core focuses of the industry. Now, there's still going to be people building cool software, but that from an HRIT perspective, I think that's going to be a core component.
Excellent. And I think that look towards the future is a great way to end our conversation on 2025's HR Technology Conference and Expo. And that was my conversation with Franz Gilbert on the changing dynamics between humans and machines, from the AI co-pilots making work more intelligent to the task level insights that can reshape job design. And even, yes, the very real future of humanoid robots in the workplace. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time. Capital H.
Okay, Capital H listeners, that will do for today. Thanks for tuning in. Of course, as usual, a big thank you to Matt and Franz for sharing their perspectives, and today on AI, task intelligence, and robotics, and how that's reshaping the future of work. Do be sure to follow us, listeners, wherever you find us. Hit that like and subscribe button, and reach out to us with your feedback. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, stay curious. This podcast is produced by Deloitte. The views and opinions expressed by podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Deloitte. This podcast provides general information only and is not intended to constitute advice or services of any kind. For additional information about Deloitte, please go to deloitte.com/about.